Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of Insights from Tibii podcast. My name is Jeff Potter, and I have the pleasure of introducing you to some amazing human beings with many inspirational stories to share. Tibii truly believes that everyone in this world deserves to live their best life. By sharing the positive experiences of others with you all, we hope that your life can be enriched also. Before I introduce today's guest, I would like to take a moment to do Tibii's welcome to country. In the spirit of reconciliation, Tibii acknowledges the country's traditional custodians throughout Australia. We honour their connections to land, sea and community. We respect the stories, traditions and living cultures of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples on this land and commit to building a brighter future together. We also acknowledge all people who have had lived experience with disability. Their voices are essential in the development of our work. Today's guest is Phil Eling. Phil has lived and is still living a wonderful life. He is an author, a university graduate with 3 degrees, currently studying his Ph.D, married to his lovely wife Susan, and working full-time helping others. His life story, I'm sure, will bring a smile to your face. Hi Phil, and welcome to our podcast, Insights from Tibii.
Hello Jeff, how are you?
I'm absolutely fantastic. I guess the first thing I'd like to know is, as a child growing up, who and what inspired you to overcome your challenges?
Well, as a typical kid growing up in the 90s, born in the late 80s, it started typical. I love movies and you see the protagonists, they overcome obstacles typically. And most movies, they overcome in the third act. And the second act is about something bad happening to send them away, and then they come back and save the day. So I guess dreamingly, I would say, I started by watching movies where the good guy always wins and the strength that they use to overcome certain obstacles. But in a more practical sense, my dad was in the army for 20 years, and I absolutely idolized my dad. When he would pick me up from school, I'd say, "Dad, show them your muscles." And my dad wasn't a overly big guy, but, he was a macho man, and he would oblige by my requests. And I used to idolize him, and I loved action movies, and, my dad being in the army, I thought that was good. And I always looked up to people, even my mum, people that were strong, people that persevered through thick and thin. And my parents, as a kid, were my biggest role models.
So Phil, can you tell us about 1996 and the Broncos?
So again, my dad links into this. There was another person I forgot to mention, my granddad. You read my book and you can see how close I am still with my grandfather. My granddad was married into the family. He's not the biological father, so he never had children. And I think that's why we connected so well. But I was a big fan of rugby. Born in Brisbane, I loved the Maroons and the Broncos. I never really travelled interstate. So my dad and my granddad decided for my birthday to take me to Brisbane, and I would see my first ever live rugby game. And they won. I'll never forget. It was 42-10. They were playing at the time the Balmain Tigers, now called the West Tigers. My dad saw Wayne Bennett, the coach, walking down to the locker right past us, just as the game concluded. And my dad, not being afraid, ambushed good old Wayne Bennett. My son is a huge fan. Can he meet his favourite player, whose name was Gordon Tallis? And little known to my dad, Wayne has a disabled son. And Wayne's son is always there. So when Wayne saw that I had a physical disability, he said to my dad, "I'll do you one better. How about you bring him down to the locker room and he can meet all the players?" I was overwhelmed with excitement and joy. And indeed, I met all the players. Mm-hmm. They gave me a Broncos flag and they all signed it. It was overwhelming. And I will always look back on that as one of the best memories of my childhood.
If I said the town Coolangatta, what does that place mean to you?
Happiness. Funny story, I'll be as quick as I
Okay.
can. Around that time, I had just become an adult, a legal adult, 18, and I had transitioned from the Women's and Children's Hospital to the Queen Elizabeth, which is in Woodville, Adelaide. And I'd gone for one of my first appointments, and it was miserable. The weather, it was just bucketing down with rain. And I made a joke to my granddad, who always drove our car because my mum didn't like driving. I made a joke and I said, oh, let's drive to Darwin because I know it's warm there. And my granddad, he turned and he says, oh, I'd much rather take you to Coolangatta because they had a caravan and they used to go there every year. So that conversation literally sent us to the airport the next day. And at the time, we discovered that I couldn't fly. My wheelchair wasn't able to be on the plane, and it wasn't even a big wheelchair. And to this day, if I ever get a platform big enough, that's something that I will advocate for. There's a very, very outdated policy on aircrafts where they don't let you take your wheelchair on the plane. Like, I need to stay in my wheelchair, and I can't. And to me, that makes no sense because I can take my wheelchair on a bus. I can take my wheelchair on a train. So we ended up driving to Coolangatta in 2007. We made 4 stops at 4 nights, and I just fell in love with it. It was all within walking distance. The weather was beautiful, full of wildlife. So we ended up going 2007, 2008, 2009, and then we took a break and went again in 2015 and 2016. And those last 2 times was 1 month each time. We stayed in a beautiful apartment on the 19th floor of a building called Reflections. It was bliss. And so I relate Coolangatta and the Gold Coast to a happy place. Subsequently, I have another happy place. Since I've been married to my wife, we go away at least 2 or 3 times a year to a place called Mount Lofty House. Mount Lofty House is beautiful. Instead of the beach, it's the serene country.
How did your mum and dad's divorce impact you?
Mum and dad's divorce is a very typical sort of what I would imagine a lot of divorces are. You have a family. In this case, one is physically disabled. That can cause strain, but there was other issues that is between my parents. At the time, it was a great feeling simply because you could cut the tension in the air every day, arguing every day, seeing things that kids shouldn't be exposed to. So at the time, it was a great feeling because I knew that was over and I knew greener pastures were on the horizon. The ignorance of a child is interesting because obviously I looked at it very black and white. So no more fighting means more happiness. It was only as I got older and actually getting married myself that I realized there's a lot more to things than meets the eye. And I do think that's why parents should try to not argue in front of their kids because kids see one parent yelling and they think that's the bad one, right? Because they're yelling. Well, I realize now, later in life that sometimes things are a lot deeper and there's a lot more layers to that. Studying psychology myself, I have a better understanding. And what ended up happening was much later in life, only about 3 years ago, because my father lives at Port Lincoln. I met with him and my wife Susan was the impetus for this. Life is too short to live in the past. So thanks to my wife, my dad and I ended up having this great conversation. I said to my father that I want you to know that as an adult, as a man, I understand and I don't have any grudges against anything that happened when I was a kid. And my dad got teary-eyed, and we both got teary-eyed, and things have been a lot better and really good. So that's how it, impacted me as a kid and how I evolved as an adult.
There's a quotation from your book which says, "I reject your reality and substitute my own." So can you elaborate on that?
So the keen listeners, the science nerds like myself, they would know that that quote comes from the start of the TV show Mythbusters. Adam Savage, one of the scientists, he would say that. It would be in the intro reel of the show. Now, that's the obvious answer. The deeper answer is philosophical, and is one of the reasons I'm actually doing a PhD, is because there's a lot of these questions that are so deep that you almost get sensory overload if you think about it too much. And what it is phenomenology, which is the subjective experience in psychology. It's the branch of psychology that I'm doing my PhD in. You can tell me something along the lines of people with muscle diseases typically don't live past 25. And I can say, well, I reject that reality because I will live past 25. There's no if, ands, or buts. I will. And what's happened in time is, I use this term loosely, but by me living in a semi-idealistic / delusional reality has actually come to benefit me greatly, because I don't look at things as extremes. I'm not a conservative nor a progressive. I see things in the middle. I have this contrast. And by me saying I reject your reality and I substitute my own, what that really means is I reject definitive extremes, and I believe in a continuum of many possible outcomes, all of which have not happened, but have also happened simultaneously at the same time. To put that simply, when doctors say you may get a reaction to a medicine, doesn't mean that you will. They're just saying, I believe in willing. When I say willing, I mean mind power, believing and manifesting what I desire to happen. I did that with my health the last 36 years, my studies, I did it with my marriage, and I did it with my work. It's just the way that I live.
I'm sorry to use a bad dad joke, but that sounds like a good philosophy.
It is. Well, I mean, another quick one, just to show you how fascinated I am with philosophy. Are you familiar of the ship of Theseus?
Not specifically. Fill me in.
All right. So very, very simply this. There was a ship owned by a Greek philosopher. His name was Theseus. He had a big ship. This is probably like 500 years ago. Really big ship. After he left his reign, the ship was placed as a heritage item, and it was docked, and there she stayed forever. However, over time, parts rust. So what they did is they replaced the sail, okay? 50 years later, the bow needs replacing. So they replaced the bow. Over consecutive decades, every single part of that ship was replaced in some capacity. So it begs the question, is that the same ship, or is it something completely different? Let's bring that into reality. If tomorrow I get a phone call from my neurologist and they go, Phil, your condition, it has a cure. In fact, you'll be up and running and challenging Usain Bolt. And I'm like, okay. The question is this. In my new capacity, in my new experience, in my new mindset, am I the same person that I was before? And on a deep level, maybe I'm more arrogant. Maybe I'm more selfish. maybe I think now that I've got this, all the people that have supported me, I lose contact with. Maybe I don't end up like that. Maybe I end up more generous. But the point is, any change to a certain degree, you start to wonder, is it the same thing that it once was?
I'm glad we're getting so deep, Phil.
Well, with me, you're always going to get deep philosophical thoughts.
Fantastic. So, Phil, can you tell our listeners what you've achieved in your life since you wrote your book in 2012?
Oh boy. Oh, well, so 2 years after that, I got a formal diagnosis. They took a sample. It was a brand new technology. They sent it to the UK. Took 6 months, but they sequenced my entire genetic code. My parents, everyone. And I got diagnosed with something called Bethlehem myopathy. Now, interestingly, with Bethlehem myopathy, you're normally walking around until you turn about 70 and then you end up using crutches. I've been in a wheelchair since I was 5 years old. I have a rare mutation in the collagen A1 gene, which causes a new form of Bethlehem myopathy. So the good news is the prognosis was you can live a full life. So that's one thing. I went from thinking short term to thinking long term. I went to university. I got my bachelor's in criminology, postgrad in forensic psychology, and the postgrad in disability studies, and I'm now doing my PhD. I met and married my wife, started a life of my own, and work in the disability sector as a service coordinator.
Fantastic.
So, and a registered counsellor. So those are some of the things.
Phil, can you give us some insights into your wonderful marriage with Susan?
Oh, it's the best thing that's ever happened. My wife was born in Kenya. She's been here for a long time now, well before we met. She's strong, is a lot like my mum, and
Cool.
in a way, that's why I think I was drawn to her. I was raised by women. I was raised in a family of strong women, and she's selfless. She's kind, beautiful on the inside and out. She supports everything that I do. I support everything she does. And I don't know. I mean, I can go on all day about how amazing she is, but without her, I probably wouldn't be working. I probably wouldn't be doing my PhD. She's always been there when I'm achieving great milestones, and she's always there when I'm having a bad day or when something isn't going right. She is wise beyond her years. She's perfect.
I guess it just goes to show that none of us can actually do it alone. We've got to have those supports around us, and whatever form that takes. So.
Right, and we've sort of become this viral sensation. I mean, our wedding video hit 6.5 million views on Facebook. A recent video 2.5 weeks ago is standing at 5 million views.
Whoa, fantastic.
We've had documentaries done from the UK, from America, from New Zealand, from Australia. We were a bit of a phenom because we were an interable, interracial couple, and it worked out well and people were blown away. It's sort of become this symbol of hope. A lot of people, just by watching us, have really felt that they deserve love and they are entitled to being loved. So I like to remind people that no one is unlovable. Everyone can find someone. You don't need to sit there and say, well, I have to lower my standards. Right. You don't need to do that. Someone for everyone.
That leads me to my next question about what the word motivation actually means for you.
Sacrifice, hard work, perseverance, discipline. This sounds like my dad, but this is true. Hard work, perseverance, discipline, faith in something. It can be a religious faith. It can be the universe, anything. But have something that you can submit to and go, I know I'm powerless to a degree, so make me strong. Give me insight. give me knowledge, and always wake up and tell yourself, today there is something I don't know, so I'm going to learn it.
So I know that the work that you do is very important to you. Can you perhaps just tell us a bit about what the work you do, I guess especially in the disability sector, sort of means to you and what you take home each day?
I love my work. I've worked in various companies over the years. I've been a registered counselling. I've worked with you guys so far. We love that. I support the supports. I support the support workers. And it's so gratifying because they have issues that go deeper than just their work. And I love helping them. I'm also a service coordinator for another provider called Fair Hands. And I've been doing that for 3 years. I work with great people. I'm very grateful and thankful to be given that opportunity to progress my career. Work keeps me busy. It gives me discipline. I thrive well under sort of pressure. In fact, the more pressure, the better I'll do.
And I think that's so important in the sector that we're working in.
Definitely.
Look, it's been an absolute pleasure having you as our guest on the Insights from Tibii podcast. Thank you so much. You're inspirational, Matt.
That's greatly appreciated and my pleasure. And the people that are listening, I'd love to connect. If there's anything I can do, anyone just wants to talk, if you just want to have a chat, you can send me a direct message on my Facebook, and that is Philip, which is Phillip, Eling, Eling. My profile picture is of me and my wife, so it's not that difficult to see. It'll be obvious. If you want to connect on a deeper level, or maybe you're interested in therapeutic services, if you really want a meaningful counseling session, then you can email me, Phil, and then my last name, ELING, @yahoo.com.au. It would be my privilege to talk with you.
Phil, it has been an absolute pleasure having you as our guest today on the Insights from Tibii podcast.
No, thank you so much for having me.
Tibii looks forward to bringing you many more inspirational moments going forward. In the meantime, you can check out our socials on Facebook, Instagram and LinkedIn for more tips relating to the disability sector. Please refer to our website tibii.com.au, that's tibii.com.au, to find out more information on the change that is needed. Tibii would like to share with you our motto. This is a Persian poet, Sadi Shirazi. Human beings are members of a whole, in creation of one essence and soul. If one member is inflicted with pain, other members uneasy will remain. If you have no sympathy for human pain, the name of a human you cannot retain. So until next time, this is Jeff Potter, presenting Insights from Tibii. Thanks for listening.